FedEx full, we command in the block. Burgundy and gold, got the city on lock. Hustling plays, they don't need to pretend. DC rep is strong and we fight to the end. Command is moving, no breaks, no pause. Hands in the dirt, respecting the call. KDot and Amit dissect the grind. District divider with city in mind. Trying to dance why, don't miss a bit. And you gotta spread the words, so shit is shit. KDot.
Welcome, everyone, to District Divided, a DC sports podcast. More specifically, a Washington Commanders podcast. I am Amit. That is KDot. And right next to me is Benjamin Robinson, a recurring guest annually, who comes in and talks about the NFL draft with us. And we're very appreciative of your time, Ben. Thanks for being here. So with that, why don't we go ahead and throw it over to you? You've got a website called Grinding the Mocks. You've been working on this for years now. Just tell us a little bit about it real quick.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. That intro was really hot. Grinding the Mocks is my project that I've been working on for like the past 7 years, trying to predict the NFL draft using mock drafts, data science, and the wisdom of crowds. Basically what I do is I collect, by the end of this year will be probably a couple thousand or so mock drafts. And I use that data and some proprietary models to kind of use like AI and stuff to say where we think players will get drafted. And I have a really good track record over the years of, for example, like I'm probably near the top of the list of picking the top 100 players that will get drafted. So on my site right now, you're going to see the top 50. And over the past 3 years, my top 50 has, basically been what the first round of the draft is. So it's a really good kind of way to ground yourself in what's happening in the draft without having to read a bunch of different mock drafts and wonder, who is saying whatever they're saying and why I should believe it.
Yeah, that's so perfectly said, and he's good at what he does. So you're going to want to pay attention to this episode. And if his voice sounds familiar to you, well, he's been on with Al Galdi in the past as well, another local guy. So let's go ahead and get into the Washington Commanders, right? So we've got 5 picks this year. We've traded a whole bunch of them for Laramie Tunsil. Deebo Samuel was a 5th rounder. Marshawn Lattimore at the trade deadline. So we are left with around 1 pick. That's 29 overall. 2nd round pick, 61 overall. 4th round pick, 6th round pick, and 7th round pick. That's 128, 205, and 245 overall. But we're going to begin with the glamour pick. That's going to be the 1st round pick. So, Ben, question for you. At pick 29, this is philosophical to begin with. Do you draft for need, or are you just going best player available?
I first want to start off and say, holy crap, the Washington Commanders are picking at pick 29. At this time last year, I think I was the one who said I would take over 6.5 wins. So, what a season. To think from where, we were last year to where the team is now, like it's a real 180. It's really incredible. So start off there. The offense is way further along than I think people thought they were. I think there's a idea that the offense is good and we don't need to worry about the offense. And the defense was the problem. We need to raise the floor of the defense, and anything on offense would be a luxury. But I think that they should probably focus on best player available on defense. I think that's kind of where I would be in this draft. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the positions that they were going to be really interested in, especially like defensive end, pass rusher, there are going to be a lot of them selected in the 1st round. And by the time they come back, the pool of talent will not be as good. And so I think that that 1st overall pick, it should be best player available on defense, whether that's defensive line or secondary. So I'm happy to talk more about it. But I mean, I think at this point, if they had just been like a middling team, then just take the best player available. But this is a team that's window is wide open, and there's some things that need to get fixed. And they've used the trade market to kind of attack 2 of those things so that they don't have to use those high picks on receiver or tackle unless a player really, really, really good, really, really high on their board comes to them. But to me, it would be best player available on defense.
Okay, so talking about best player available on defense, based on your data, who will be that best player available come pick 29 for our Washington Commanders?
So to me, the best player available, what I did was I looked at my mock draft data and I compared it to my big board player ranking data. And I said, let's look at kind of if all of the 29 picks go in the order that I have them, who's the highest rated available player on the board? And that's Malaki Starks, safety from Georgia. So he's not a guy that I think that the Commanders have been tied to in mock drafts super much. The big needs have been, defensive line, tackle, wide receiver, and like cornerback. But in terms of the players who are available, regardless of position, he's one of those guys. So he was the top safety in the class kind of coming into the season. Didn't work out super well at the combine, but it's kind of one of those guys where he's just really good on tape. And I expect that he might be a kind of guy you can move around the defense, play some safety, play some cornerback, kind of complement some of the skill set that Mikey Sanders still offers, who was, the Commanders' second-round pick last year. So continuing to invest in those players, guy who offers versatility, play multiple positions, that's something I think that would be a good fit for the Commanders. But I do believe that if the defensive linemen they like are there, even if they're lower on my board, they will probably attack that position because of the strength. Like I said earlier, you want to look at relative strengths of positions. It's a really smart thing to do to kind of try to look ahead and use the intelligence that we have in the mock draft community to basically say, hey, where do we have, if we feel really good about what the data says about the top 100, what players are going to be around when we look at the board later on, and how do we stack them? But if it was purely best player available on defense, it would be Malaki Starks for me.
Okay, Malaki Starks, safety out of Georgia. And let's say we were drafting for need as well. So we talked about best player available regardless of position on defense. Well, I mean, it seems to be common knowledge and common thought that edge rusher is, in fact, a need for this Commander's defense. So if drafting for that need, what players over there of those edge rushers do you think we target at 29 will be available at 29 potentially?
So I think two players that are pure, like squarely in the Commanders' site are Donovan Ezeiraku. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
KDot's guy. Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. My guy as well, as we've talked about extensively before.
This is true.
Edge rusher from Boston College. So he's one who I think that he's a late riser. I don't know, he might go earlier than we expect. So if he did get past Detroit, that might be something where you kind of want to be fingers crossed that he makes it to you. The other guy that I think is much more likely to be available is Tennessee edge rusher James Pearce. He, I think, is a guy who came into the season with really high expectations. He was probably one of the top-ranked edge rushers coming into the season. And I think people saw the pass rush skills continued to light up. He was a little more rotational than maybe I think some people would want in Tennessee's defense. And I've heard different things about his attitude around a run defense. I watched him a little bit in the playoff game they had against Ohio State. I thought he looked pretty good. But overall, I think people have said that there's something to be desired in terms of his run defense. But in terms of the pass rush, that's his calling card. And so if the Commanders are looking for pure pass rush guy, maybe designated pass rusher, third down type of guy to start, but guy who can kind of grow into some more of that, who's really well regarded, then I think James Pearce is also a really good pick. So those are the two guys that lead the Commanders in my weighted mock draft share metric, which basically takes all the mock drafts and just weights them based on when the mock draft was made and who made them. And they kind of both have about 7.5% of the overall weighted mock draft share for the Commanders.
All right, perfect. Thank you for that. So that's going to be Donovan Ezeiraku, and that is going to be James Pearce out of Tennessee. If not going Malaki Starks, who would be probably the best player available according to the data so far, safety out of Georgia. KDot, I know you got some questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, my main question was who did you see getting mocked to us more than anybody else? But I'm guessing that's Ezeiraku and Pearce.
I can talk about some other guys too, real quick, just to round out the rest of the top five. So there's a couple wide receivers and another pass rusher. So like I said, there's some people who believe that you should try to kind of build up the defense because the defense needs to have a higher floor than what it did this season. I totally respect that. There's also some people who are we want to score more points. We want to make sure we shore up our wide receiver position. And so two wide receivers that pull up the rear of this mock draft list that I have of weighted mock drafts are Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver from Ohio State, and Luther Burden, wide receiver from Missouri. So I think those guys were both really well regarded coming into the season. Burden is kind of known as like a bit of a diva, but that's not a bad thing in receivers necessarily. Sometimes you want those dogs. And then Egbuka, I think, people are going to compare, he's another Ohio State guy, Terry McLaurin, completely different players. But yeah, Egbuka has been solid. I think he could have come out and been a first round or second round pick last year. He's kind of in like the same position this year where I think people are like sleeping on him a lot. But I think those would be solid picks for the Commanders in the first round if they wanted to go wide receiver and really kind of shore up. Deebo Samuel, there's a lot of people who, you're hoping that he can return to form in some way, but there's no guarantee of that. And so this could be some additional insurance in case Deebo really is kind of cooked. And then the last edge rusher who's ranked a lot higher in my data is Mike Green, edge rusher from Marshall, who transferred from Virginia to Marshall, had a really great season, really impressed at the Senior Bowl. Kind of like didn't even really work out at the combine because he basically I don't know if he feels like he needs to. But he's a guy that I would be really surprised if he was available at the Commanders pick. It probably would be due to character issues. There's some like really not so awesome stuff in his background that I'm not going to like litigate here on this podcast. But if you want to look it up, it's publicly available information. But yeah, those are kind of the guys that round out the rest of that weighted mock draft share list.
Okay, so we also learned that Mike Green may become a Philadelphia Eagle. Go ahead, KDot. And we lost your audio. As he figures that one out. All right, so I know KDot's going to line up with questions. Yeah, it's a bit soft, but you can get the question off and figure it out in the meanwhile.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Last year when we were talking about steals and reaches, and I know that for your thought process when you're looking at the big board itself, you said that you didn't necessarily believe in the whole steal terminology, because usually when you look at where guys get drafted compared to the big board, it usually kind of checks out as far as from a steal standpoint. But from a reach thing, if you're looking at the guys that you have mocked for as the 29, as far as some of the pass rushers, do you think any of them are a great leap as far as from a reach standpoint compared to where it is you have them on the big board?
So, about reaches, there's like empirical evidence that basically steals aren't a thing.
Right.
But reaches could there's really no such thing as a steal, but there is like some empirical support for the existence of reaches. So
Right.
like if you, for example, like the thing about steals is that usually when that happens, it's probably because the league has passed over the player multiple times. And so every time you pass a player over, you should probably reassess your initial eval and kind of pin your hopes on the player closer to where they're drafted versus where they go. And so every year, I put out a list of the teams who kind of reached the most or ended up getting steals the most, and everyone gets really excited about the teams that get steals because they think that they got players that are a lot better than where they got them. And in reality, those things should probably get discounted. But yeah, in terms of reaches, I think there's like it's not as clear cut. It's okay on the day 3 of the draft to be like getting reaches. I weight those a lot worse, but like you do want to be wary of what the rest of the league thinks of a player. In the last 3 years, there haven't been as many reaches in the first round. The biggest reach was Cole Strange, and that was 2 or 3 years ago at this point. The last few years, the latest a player has gone outside of Cole Strange was around the top 50, like your Ricky Pearsalls from last year. And you can make some of the arguments there that those players wouldn't be available potentially at your next pick. So you can kind of make those arguments, but yeah, the empirical evidence says that steals aren't real, reaches might be real. And in terms of the players that I mentioned, James Pearce has been like probably one of my like bigger fallers relative to where he started the process. And so there's maybe some evidence to believe that he's being anchored a lot by his like people thought the kind of initial prior evaluation that people had of him coming into the season. So there's a chance that maybe he falls further than where I even have him right now. So if there's any of the guys on the list that I mentioned that would be like considered maybe more of a reach, it might be James Pearce. But the thing about him is that his pass rush skill is his calling card. And so there's some people who believe that he has some like character stuff in his background around like not wanting to play hard or whatever. I don't know, but I like to think that when he becomes a pro, the environment that the Commanders staff has nurtured can kind of bring him up to speed. But he's really good at pass rushing, so that's a thing that the team needs.
What again? So while KDot's figuring out his audio, I've got another question, Ben, which is, so we've talked about, and this will be more of a general question. What positions would you say are deepest in the draft? Because there is this sort of thought that based on the Commanders' needs, we have lined it up really, really well with what the draft will provide, right? So we've got these needs at edge, at running back, etc. We'll get to running backs in a bit. And we've lined up with that. But what do you see as the positions that are deepest?
So I think the positions that are deepest are edge rusher, running back, interior offensive line, and maybe tight end or offensive tackle. But starting like at edge rusher, like there's just gonna, like I look at my horizontal board on grinding the mocks, and I'm pulling it up here and look at it on the side, and it's just like defensive line is just the players that are going to be available even in the second round are just really good. There's a lot of guys that I think are second round types who could end up, who could end up in the first round. And like I said, teams also kind of look ahead to see who might be available in the second round. And in a world where, you know, you see the future, right? And you see like, oh, there's going to be a ton of edge defenders later. I don't think it stops you from picking one right now because the premium position nature. But when I bring up like running back, for example, there are a lot of good running backs in this class. Running back's not a premium position. So in theory, I think like running back is going to be one of the more interesting positions to watch. And I think the Commanders should be judicious about that. I wouldn't use a pick in the top 100 on a running back, given the number of picks they have and the guys who could be available later. And I'm happy to talk more about like why I think that's important. I think also,
please
like,
do.
One of the things is that Jaden Daniels is basically unofficially a running back. So any running back that you end up like pairing with him,
Get out and I have the same look. Go ahead.
Like, so Jaden offers a skill set that very few quarterbacks have.
That's better.
Really good passing the ball, really good running the ball. And so the guys who I think you want to draft are guys who can complement his skill set. The design and run should be a continued feature of the Commanders' offense. I've talked about this with Amit a bunch, but like it's a specialty of his. You want to be able to lean into that a ton. You don't need a great running back when that happens. You need complementary types who can catch the ball. I want the ball in Jaden Daniels' hands basically as much as possible. And so, and I think over the course of the season, he's proven that he has that Lamar Jackson quality of being able to, and he's something that he got better at as the season went on, of avoiding, holding the ball and being able to avoid getting hit. I was really, you look back at his profile in college, and the main kind of blemish on it was this pressure to sack stuff, where he was just holding on to the ball forever, and in the pros, it didn't really bite him as much. And so to me, the guys you want are more complementary types. And I still think you can get good value in like the fourth round or later for running back. There are all kinds of signals, like the Ravens general manager, Eric DaCosta, came out this past week and said that their board is much bigger than it normally is. Usually their boards are like 150 players and their board is like a little more than 200 players. And so that maybe is a sign that other teams' boards are bigger too. And it wouldn't surprise me if there are running backs that they think are good, that kind of are similar outside of the third round, going from like the fourth round, basically all of maybe fourth, fifth, and sixth round, where there isn't that much of a difference between the running backs.
So let's pull on this thread a little bit. Pick 128 then, right? Like that's our fourth round pick. So we know about rounds 1 and 2. Who are some running backs that you think would be available at that time? We did a running back episode where we were focused on a guy like TreVeyon Henderson, who shortly won't be available at pick 128. So who are some guys that would be?
So a couple guys that I would focus on, really there's like 3 of them that I really like. One is Bhayshul Tuten, running back from Virginia Tech. Really fast, really athletic, good production, yards per carry, and all that. Fumbling issues were his main problem. So I think he's a guy that I could see being a real good addition to the backfield. Sorry. The other guys are Devin Neal, running back from Kansas, and Damien Martinez, running back from Miami, Florida. So those are 3 guys who I think would probably be available in that range, who I think offer a lot of value. And the difference between taking a running back at the end of the second round, for example, versus in the 4th round is that you get more like of a shot at the Caleb Johnsons or Dylan Sampsons. And I'd almost rather have the Tutens or the Devin Neals or the Martinezes. I know Tuten. I know hey, I didn't come up with a name. Is it Tutton? I don't know. It only has one T, T-U-T-E-N.
I was laughing at KDot,
Okay.
who's a big Dylan Sampson guy who had a big smile on his face when you mentioned his name, and then said you'd rather have Tuten, and then all of a sudden his smile.
Dylan Sampson.
There you go. There you go.
The opportunity cost, to me is just so high. Like Dylan Sampson's my 77th ranked player. I like him a lot. You really have to think about how much would that second round running back add versus a 4th round running back. And so to me, like I view Dylan Sampson in a similar way that I view like the 3 guys that I talked about. I think that the real drop off, like the first 5 running backs I think are quite good. And that's Ashton Genty from Boise State, Omarion Hampton from North Carolina, TreVeyon Henderson, who you brought up before, from Ohio State, Henderson's buddy Quinshawn Junkins, also from Ohio State, and then Caleb Johnson from Iowa. Those top 5 are the ones I think that really set themselves apart. And the other ones, I think that there's a pretty decent amount of similarity. And, given how much draft capital the Commanders have spent, you can go all the way back to the, Antonio Gibsons, to the Brian Robinsons. I don't think that's proven to be a really good strategy, especially when I said I think you really want to get players who complement Jaden Daniels' skill set. And so to me, the kind of quicker, better pass catching backs, those are the ones that I would be wanting to go after, not necessarily just a bell cow one. I want the ball in Jaden Daniels' hands about as much as possible.
Yeah, fair enough. KDot, that mic going well?
Yeah, I was just tapping to make sure I still was here.
Yeah, you're good.
Well, let me ask you. I know that we're on Grounding Mocks. It's mostly, it's all just players. But do you have any data or data sets that would tell you, is it likely that Washington tries to move out of the 29 position to get a 2nd or 3rd round pick?
I don't really have any data on my site that says whether they'll do that or not. This is
whether it's a good idea.
Whether it's a good idea, that's a separate thing. That's just an opinion. So I think there is a lot of value in trading down for a team like Washington, and that comes back to some of the trades that they made. I'm pretty open about the Tunzel trade. I think he's really good, and if they were going to spend a high pick on tackle, go big or go home on that. I thought the Debo trade was fine because it's basically pretty low cost. The trade that really I think was a mistake, and I know this is in hindsight, but I kind of felt that way at the time, was the Marshawn Lattimore trade. I think you got to give up a lot to get him, and in a position group that we know is what we call a weak link position group, which means that it only takes one player to mess up for the whole system to kind of break down. Like only one player has to lose their battle, right, for a guy to be able to make a big play. It's similar on the offensive line, where you can have 4 really good guys, and if one bad guy, that you're cooked, right? And so on the offensive line, it's good to have real solid average, like good quality around, not necessarily always elite. But yeah, when they drafted Brandon Coleman last year, I thought that he was going to play guard, and then I'm pretty sure he played left tackle a ton.
He did.
So I was like, whoa. Well, Tunsil solves that problem, and so you can move Coleman to guard, where I think he probably was a better fit. But when it comes to Lattimore, yeah, that was a really steep price, and I think that I would think they would like to recoup some of that if they could, especially if they feel, hey, we like some of the defenders that are available later, and we can talk about some of them more if we want after this. But I think they should try to recoup some draft capital from that trade specifically.
Mm-hmm.
See, you were right. Terrible trade.
It says hindsight. I mean, hey, Lattimore was hurt. I mean, potentially, you know, maybe next year he comes back and he's better. He's definitely better than Benjamin St. Juste. But I think that they were probably similar, like cheaper options that could have offered you about the same thing that didn't sacrifice the future. And I didn't think that like adding a cornerback was going to change that much for the Commanders because, like I said, it's more than just a cornerback. They had a lot of other issues, and they still almost made the Super Bowl. So
Yeah.
it was an exciting year, and I don't think that I think putting that much investment into that, it's not going to move the Super Bowl odds. Like you didn't see like the Super Bowl odds for the Commanders change much, if at all, probably on the addition of Marshawn Lattimore, and that tells you about all you need to know.
Well, I mean, we still had a rookie quarterback, you know, over there, so I don't know how much they would have changed in any case, just because it would have been unprecedented to begin with. Just to remind folks, Marshawn Lattimore and a 5th rounder to us. That 5th rounder turned to Deebo Samuel for a 3rd, 4th, and 6th this year. So that's the reference, or just the information you guys need when hearing about that Marshawn Lattimore trade. KDot, back to you with more questions there.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm pretty good as far as anything at 29, but unless we want to go outside, like bigger picture as far as the draft stuff goes.
Before we do that, and
let's go to 61.
Let's go to 61 because what we heard you say, Ben, is that look, the way KDot and I approached the running back episode was okay. You probably don't do it at 29, probably. But 61, like we were both sort of looking at it, right? So we mentioned a lot of guys at 61 where we would be like, hey, nice 2nd round pick. There's some really, really good running backs. And then you had mentioned some guys in the 4th round that we could take. Well, what should we do with that 2nd round pick? Is that best player available? Again, go ahead, KDot.
Clarification. I think I'm only good with the 2nd round pick if it's Henderson.
That's fair. I am too. I am too, just
Okay.
to be clear. That I think you and I are lockstep of like, man, TreVeyon Henderson seems to be a guy. But back to you, Ben. Like, what would you do with that 2nd round pick?
You know, I think it does vary depending on what they do in the 1st round. So when I look at the weighted mock drafts by position, you know, I saw edge rusher number 1 far and away, wide receiver. I think that was before they added Deebo, tackle before they added Tunsil. The other ones are cornerback and safety. And so when I look in the 2nd round, I think you can continue to look at edge. I think it might make sense to double dip there. And so when I look at the edges in the 2nd round, a guy that is, I think, has a lot of upside is UCLA edge rusher Olu Oladejo. His full name is like really hard to pronounce, so just call him Olu, kind of like Fashanu last year. But yeah, so edge rusher from UCLA, I think he's someone who would be in play. I think there's also a guy like a Jack Sawyer or a Braden Swinson from LSU. So Jack Sawyer, Ohio State, Braden Swinson from LSU, kind of definitely in like the 2nd tier. I could also see like a JT Tuimoloau from Ohio State, a Jordan Birch from Oregon, or a Princely Uman Milan from Ole Miss. There's still a bunch of guys who I think are pretty decent who in the 2nd tier, or maybe even depending on how you view the tiers, like 3rd or 4th tier of edge rusher who could be available on day 2. And then when I think about secondary players, you know, I talked about Malaki Starks in the 1st round as a safety. If they do want to go back at safety potentially, Kevin Winston from Penn State is a guy that I think would be interesting. And then in terms of cornerbacks, there's a few that I can see falling. One is Darian Porter, cornerback, Iowa State. Really, really intriguing prospect. Really tall, really athletic. Former wide receiver, was his 1st year playing corner, and the results were pretty good. But just like top tier athletes, like 6'3", like very good athlete. The other guys that I'm thinking about are Florida State cornerback Azarie Thomas and Notre Dame cornerback Benjamin Morrison. Thomas, you know, FSU wasn't thought of as a good team this year. They definitely weren't relative to expectations for sure, and record, I guess, if we're being honest. But Thomas was like probably the best player on their defense. And so I think he would be a good addition in the cornerback room. And then Benjamin Morrison, really, really well regarded coming into the season. The tape is really good. Got hurt this year and didn't finish out the year. So another player who's kind of fits that mold is Siobhan Revel from East Carolina, who had a lot of 1st round hype coming into the season and got hurt in the offseason, and could be a guy that could be of value. Might not have been available in the 2nd round. if he had the type of season that people had thought he would have and the type of like draft process that people thought he would have.
Okay.
But yeah, so I think like you can get more edge rushers there. Like there's more cornerbacks to be had there. If you want to throw out like a wide receiver that I think that could be interesting, like Trey Harris from Ole Miss could be really cool. But yeah, I think if you want to double dip on defense, and that makes a lot of sense in the top 100, that, you know, you want to focus on the line, you want to focus on some secondary players.
Okay. And so, KDot, we can now go, you know, outside of the, you know, rounds 1, 2 over there. So back to you with the question you may have had.
Overall,
No, yeah, it's gone again. And while he's doing that, I got one final question here, Ben. Day 3 No, go ahead. Go ahead, KDot. I think you're back.
Fucking technology, piece of shit. Who's sliding? Shador, all these names. Do we get who? Where's the money going on? Who's going to slide all the way out of the first round? And who's going to have the camera on them there in the place and like not get drafted?
I think Shador more likely than not. So he's one of the like biggest followers in my data the past few weeks. I think part of it has to do with he was in strong consideration for a long time at 2 and 3, and then now he's, you know, outside the top 10 potentially. So, you know, I think there's a good chance he could get picked by the Steelers. But yeah, I would think I think he'll be a first rounder. But I'll be that's the one he's the one who's falling like a rock.
I'm actually not sure he's going to be. The more I hear about it, KDot, like I'm beginning to think he might be a guy that maybe the Commanders, I don't know why they do it then instead of with another team just in front of like maybe the Rams or something. You find a trade partner and someone comes back in for Shador at maybe 29 or something like that. I'm beginning to think he wasn't invited to the draft, Shador, and Jalen Milroe was. And I know, Ben, I was looking at your mock draft data as soon as I heard that, and I was like, hang on, like that's a bit strange. And Shador, as of right now, higher. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting with Shador Sanders and what happens with him, because it may actually influence what happens with the Commanders' first round pick.
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible. I don't know. I would put too much stock into Shador not being invited to the draft. I don't think it matters too much. I think he has too much of like a media presence around him that he would want.
That not be excellent to be there? Anyway, go ahead.
I'm not sure how big I think he has a huge entourage is what I'm saying.
Okay.
But
I'd love to have seen it.
And, you know, Milroe, I think there's no guarantee he goes in the first round. Milroe's a really intriguing player. If I had to like pick my like favorite of the quarterbacks outside of Cam Ward, it would be Milroe, just because I think he's really fun to watch. And I think that there are smart teams who can kind of bring him along in a similar way to like Jalen Hurts. And it's not just the name, but like the Browns hopping back into the first round at some point. I think the draft should go 1, 2, 3 with Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, and then Abdul Carter. And so the Browns definitely, I think, have an interest in investing in another quarterback given their situation. I think Milroe makes a ton of sense. That's the kind of quarterback that they would want, but they need to use a higher amount of draft capital. So I could see a team like the Browns trading back into the first round at some point to get Milroe. One of their coaches coached him at Alabama, Tommy Rees. So, you know, there's a connection there, and really smart guy, really talented, inconsistent for sure. And then we know he has this like extremely great rushing ability. You know, he ran like in the 4.3s at the Alabama Pro Day. And he has the arm. It's just like he really struggles with like the easy stuff and sometimes with the hard stuff. But the raw athletic ability is there, and that's definitely something you need to have it gives you a higher floor than people think in the NFL. Being able to throw the ball a little bit helps, but the athletic ability will create more plays for you.
So Shador sliding, is there a quarterback, maybe Milroe, that is, you know, at the same time rising in place?
Yeah, I mean, it's Milroe. Yeah, so like this week when I looked at the biggest risers in my data in terms of like the, you know, Shador was in there. He was my third biggest faller over the past week. And then Jalen Milroe was the third highest riser. So there's like probably some amount of trade-off going on between there. But, you know, I think Sanders has been losing some amount of market share to like to Jackson Dart from Ole Miss as well.
Mm.
I think he's more likely to be in the second round. I think if there's going to be 3, I would think it would be Ward, Sanders, and Milroe. But there's a lot going on. I think Milroe was ranked pretty highly for a time, and then as the season progressed, he fell out of the good graces. Like the Alabama game was like holy moly. The LSU game was like really good. Georgia, really impressive. So Georgia and LSU games are really impressive. But then you look at like the South Carolina game, you're like, oh, what's that? And then like Oklahoma, like what's that? And then Michigan, oh my God, like what's that? Like there was just a lot of questions. It's not the kind of way you want to end your season. And then he went to the Senior Bowl, and I think I'm not sure if he was like working on something or if he just did not really show up at the Senior Bowl in a really great way either. But people are kind of coming back to the tape and realizing that he's this exceptional athlete, apparently an exceptional person too, and teams will bet on those things and that he can progress and develop in the others.
All right, cool. KDot, any final questions from you?
Yeah, is there a guy that we're looking at outside of quarterback? If we stick there at 29, it might be just that safety out of Georgia that like it looks as though we could have a Howie Roseman sort of situation where like we got a gem kind of falling to us. Like there's somebody that falling off the board that's like we could get excited or get a little giddy about that.
Our Johnny Newton pick last year, for example.
Right.
He just falls to us.
Yeah. I mean, Malaki Starks was definitely one that I thought of. If I look at my list of like the other players that were in that role, one was Luther Burden from Missouri, and the other, and I think this is one is kind of interesting, is Josh Simmons, offensive tackle, Ohio State. Transferred from San Diego State to Ohio State and just looked like it was not an issue. I think, there's a decent chance he would be competing in that like top 3 tackle conversation. There's some people who I think like him maybe better than Will Campbell and Armand Membu, who are, LSU and Missouri tackles who are going to go probably in the top 10.
Really high.
But Josh Simmons got hurt. And so in my data, he's further down in that because I think in the mocks because of that. So he's like the 27th rated player in my data. So it wouldn't be like a huge get. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know who's going to fall, but I think that there's a decent chance if the Commanders were offered a trade, I think they should take it. Like I said earlier, because I think they could recoup some of the draft capital that they've lost in that Lattimore trade, among others. But it's unclear. I think that's one of the things that I love about the draft. You had Johnny Newton last year, but then you also had TreVeyon Arnold, who I think a lot of people didn't think was going to be available, and then the Lions got him later in the first round too. So there's always some surprises and things that kind of go against the grain. The Eagles have been really, I think, both. It's like being put in a position to be lucky. When they're in that position, they don't think very hard. They look at the board and see kind of who are the best ranked players, and they've gotten a lot of really good value, like Nolan Smith, like Cooper DeJean, like Quinyon Mitchell, just
Jalen Carter,
Carter, like all these guys that were really cornerstones of their team. But also, they've been really judicious with when they had Carson Wentz going after Jalen Hurts, and then being in that position with making that like really boondoggle of a trade with the Saints that put them in a position to get Devonta Smith, and then they made that trade with the Titans to get AJ Brown, and then they're really cooking with gas. Lane Johnson has had an incredible career, and then Jordan Mailata comes out of nowhere that makes their like overdrafting or like trading up to draft the tackle Dillard that one year from Washington State, Andre Dillard, look like it's not a big deal because you get this hit on this 7th round tackle from Australia. So the Commanders aren't in that position yet, but they're in a much better position than they were before. And so focusing on getting more good players in the building, I think really helps as you kind of continue to invest in the group.
KDot, last one if you have one.
Who's your favorite player in this draft?
Oh, great question.
I love Travis Hunter. It's a cop out, but
no,
I think he's really. I think it's
a lot of people say it's fine.
I just think he's incredible. People have compared him to Shohei Ohtani, and I think that's unfair to Shohei Ohtani. But I kind of view him. I'm from Cincinnati. I'm a Cincinnati Reds fan. There was this guy that the Reds had named Michael Lorenzen, who was an incredible player for the Reds, who was a relief pitcher and a starting pitcher at certain points in his career. And he actually has been a starting pitcher, a pretty good quality starting pitcher in recent years. That's besides the point. He also could hit really well. And so the analogy is that he'll be used probably primarily as a wide receiver if he's drafted by the Browns and some other teams. And then I can see him kind of moonlighting in like third down packages and like man-to-man situations as a cornerback, because we know he's really good at that. The intensity of the NFL game is a lot higher than the college game, but the pace of the NFL game is a bit slower than the college game. So maybe there's a trade-off there where he plays a lot more on defense than we think. But his conditioning, his athleticism, his football IQ, he seems like a really humble dude. Like, to me, it's like he's the best non-quarterback in the draft. I would take him like every day and Sunday. And I think that the Browns are a team that want to try to like get as much out of the player as possible, and will come up with a way to get value out of him, whereas other players in his kind of like the Champ Baileys and the Charles Woodsons of the world, who were pretty good in limited opportunities in college, really didn't add up to much at all in the NFL. Like Deion Sanders, was used as a trick play artist at times. Travis Hunter led the Big 12 in receptions this year. He won the Heisman. He won the Campbell. He won the He was a Biletnikoff winner. He was runner-up for the Thorpe, the Horning Award. Like, he is just like, there's no player like him that I've seen in all the years that I've been covering the draft, and I'm just really excited to see what he can do in the league. If I look outside of him, then like, there's really no one else to me that compares. I'm just so excited to see what he can do.
I love that. If I look outside of him, and there's no one. So that's listen, Ben, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Once again, this is author of grindingthemocks.com. So before KDot and I continue with the episode with some stadium talk and the comment mailbag, as we always do, Ben, the floor is yours. Plug whatever you'd like to. And I'd love to hear when your final mock draft is coming out as well, please.
Oh, yeah. You can find me on the Twitter machine at grindingmocks. Grindingthemocks.com is the site. Next week, the site will be updating every morning with data from the prior day's mocks. I have a Substack now. I'm planning on doing some more like writing and whatnot, and maybe some video stuff in the off season. But that's where you'll find my mock draft. It'll post probably on Wednesday. That and my top 100 board, that'll be part of the Huddle Report contest. So my main goal is, my mock drafts kind of suck because it's just, I'm not very good at it. The data, when I have to like produce these mock drafts, it's, just takes a lot of time I can't just write it right then. I have to write it in advance. But I'm really excited for the draft. And I'll be doing some podcasts after the draft on Friday as well with my friends Aaron Schatz and Mike Tanier, who used to work at Football Outsiders, and probably also with my friend Kevin Cole, who writes the Unexpected Points newsletter. So that is all, and appreciate you guys having me on. You guys rock.
Yeah, Ben, thanks so much, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah,
nice.
It worked.
Yeah, it worked. Appreciate the time, Ben. Take it easy, all right?
For sure, guys. Have a good one.
All right, you too. Thanks. All righty. And so that was, once again, Ben Robinson. Thank you so much for coming on, Ben. Author of grindingthemocks.com, answering any number of questions there, KDot. That was quite informative. And we lost your mic. Of course we did. Of course we did. So while you go ahead and figure that one out, let people know, and I'm sure all of you already do, because it was huge news, especially in the off season. Tons of retweets from all the local reporters and stuff like that, where the Commanders are now supposedly close, and that's put in quotation marks, close to a deal with the city to be able to be at RFK, that site, that legendary site where the team used to play before going to Landover, Maryland. This would, as of right now, based on documents obtained by any number of news outlets, CBS being one of them, NBC News 4, they want to have this thing ready by fall of 2030. This would include a parking lot. This would include, of course, the stadium itself, and maybe some stuff around the stadium as well in terms of building infrastructure out. And the Commanders are going to put in $2.5 billion themselves. Yeah, which is incredible. And it's very uncharacteristic of teams these days, because normally states are just paying for it themselves. And so it's really cool that the Commanders are putting in $2.5 billion. The city would then put up to $850 million of its own money, $500 million between 2026 and 2030, and then $350 million off of the taxes made from the payments made for the stadium as well. So that is basically everything. KDot, over to you. What are your thoughts on this news? Because it's huge.
Oh, it's huge. I think that Josh Harris, just knowing that he's following up after Dan Snyder, is just trying to do all the right things. But we also got to remember, earmuffs for the people that don't like politics. There is an element of when you're talking about Washington, D.C. and all these funds with the way that Capitol Hill and the White House is at the current moment. You just got to make it the path of least resistance to get this shit done. And that includes having billionaires pay for their shit. Learn something, Ted.
That's fair to say. Learn something, Ted. Because, yeah, this was not nearly as frustrating as that one was. Jeez. That whole, we're going to go to Virginia for sure. It was seriously. Could learn something, Ted. But good luck to the Caps this coming postseason. Shout out to Ovechkin for breaking that record, too. That was dope. So, yeah, we just wanted to touch on the stadium news, it being a big deal. Any other thoughts here, KDot, before we just honestly jump over to the comment mailbag? We had to touch on it at least.
I would say that I got chased by a police helicopter by RFK, and I got a cop's gun pressed into the back of my skull at RFK.
I do. I really hope people. I really do hope people stuck around for that part. That was fantastic. Because I actually have heard that story. Oh yes, you have. Yes, you have. That was on a prior episode. I want to say, or it was on an after the pod one time. I do remember that.
Makes sense.
All right. Well, with that, we're gonna go over to the Top Golf happened. By the way, just got to say it. Top Golf happened. They took a whole bunch of players over there. We haven't really heard anything. Sounds like they had a nice time. And with that, we go over to the comment mailbag featuring an intro from our very own Nikki.
JJ!
Comment mailbag time, motherfuckers. District divided, ain't got time for no suckers. Spread the word, get in line. OGs and new G's, it's your time. And spread the gospel, cause this shit is divine. Yeah.
All right. Thank you as always for that intro, Nikki, beginning with Big Papa Grizzly. Shout out. With all of his fingers, end quote, 3 crying laughing emojis. This was a comparison KDot made last week, saying that it was it Ezeiraku? I can't remember who it was, that is Jason Pierre-Paul with all of his fingers, which was incredible. Yeah. So shout out to you, KDot, and Big Papa Grizzly.
And I like that Ben's a fan.
Yeah. In fact, I was talking to Ben before we did our Edge Rusher episode, and he had said Donovan Ezeiraku loves him, absolutely loves him. So then when you brought him up, I was like, oh man, these two are going to get on just fine when it comes to Ezeiraku. Big Papa Grizzly goes with one more. Fun fact Friday. The 2025 NFC East is the first division in NFL history to have 4 black starting quarterbacks. First team to start a black QB in the Super Bowl in NFL history. Doug Williams was also the first black QB to win the Super Bowl. Now we are part of history again. Share this shit. That was honestly a pretty mind-blowing fun fact for me. I hadn't even considered that. Pretty fucking cool, though.
Yeah. I mean, if you got like the Giants and then you have the Cowboys who are just measuring dicks the entire time. Right. And you have
that is serious.
Which is post Doug Williams and anything else. We're just making up for all the terrible karma in our earlier team history. Yeah. So love it.
Love it. And we go to Tony. Tony OG. Team history deep dive. And that still needs to happen, by the way. That does still need to happen. Maybe we'll do that post-draft because that is the true dead period before like OTAs begin and stuff like that. So Tony, that's coming after the draft. And then is sensory. What'd you say?
Cliff notes.
Cliff notes
on the team history.
Oh yeah. I could do cliff notes.
We're racist as fuck.
And I will expand on that. Is sensory deprivation tanks are dope. This was edited, so maybe that was a typo. But sensory deprivation tanks, KDot had mentioned being in one last episode. Dope. I've never done one.
You're missing out. Although I don't know. I think you find some way to like beat up on yourself inside there. You come
That's
out there just feeling like, I'm such a terrible motherfucker. I should be doing all the coke, banging all the bitches declared. Or maybe A Train takes over.
That's
Maybe Ami
yeah.
gets left in the tank and A Train.
And A-Train takes over. Some Mr. Robot shit.
You got to switch you in the tank.
Sensory deprivation, identity deprivation take. Amit is stuck in there. Here's another from Tony. B-Rob is who he is. He's good, but he doesn't have that next level to his game, is the comment from Tony. Brian Robinson has had a number of really nice games for the Commanders, but when it comes to that next level, you can understand what Tony's saying, especially when you see other running backs in the NFL like Jahmyr Gibbs or Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry. Like, that's what's considered next level, so there's no shame in it, just to be clear. But I mean, I think it's a fair comment there, KDot.
Who else is on that list?
Besides those three people?
Mhm.
Let's see. I would have to think a little more about it. I think back
Bijan Robinson, maybe.
Oh, Bijan. I think Bijan is on.
I think
the
he's
list.
there.
I think he's there.
I got to do it with a grain of salt because Falcon shit.
Right. Gosh, now I have to think about fantasy football and who's typically going higher and stuff like that. But
my whole point of it is that it's rare to have a special guy running back nowadays. So, like, the idea of B-Rob, we love him because he runs angry.
Breece Hall. I think Breece Hall's got that next level to him.
Sort of. I think I see what you're going for.
McCaffrey.
If that motherfucker's ever healthy again.
Yeah, if he's
yeah, so like so all I'm saying is that the list is pretty small because we're not giving these guys bell cow
correct
situations, and then we end up having like the scat back that looks like he is maybe the closer sort of thing, and it's just the thunder and lightning wears you down, and then you can do whatever. So like, I think B-Rob can be effective for what it is we need at a very high level if you got the complementary backs around him to make that happen and they stay healthy over the course of the season.
Yeah. We go over to Mr. Payne. Shout out Mr. Payne. QB is the most important position, but do you guys really think Philly wins the Super Bowl without Saquon? Draft running back first. Okay, so I've got some thoughts there. But KDot, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Look, man, if you listen to me ad nauseum, you know how much I love the running back position. I've hated the devaluation of the running back position. But I'd also tell you, Saquon Barkley was in New York, and what the fuck did they do?
Yeah.
Not a goddamn thing. I am all for drafting your high running back to play for you if you got everything else worked out. If you got the run blocking going, if you got a quarterback that ain't gonna turn over the fucking football, and you got a defense that'll be able to get the offense back on the field, it's like, let's do it. And you can get some, and the value of that running back is exponentially huge. But until you have that, it's a waste of time.
And KDot, you've been consistent on that all the way through. You've mentioned that you're wasting, by the way, right. The devaluation of the running back position is obviously unfortunate. It is also unfortunate that there is some credence to the point. And when you lose out on years on that rookie deal, and then they're asking to get paid, you get put into a troubling situation because you weren't prepared to bring in said running back. So when Ben Robinson mentions the fourth round, there's a reason he's doing that, because there is some proof to that statement. Now, if you did take a guy like Josh Simmons, right, who apparently some people think is really good, could even be the best tackle in this draft out of Ohio State, and he was just hurt last season. All right, well, let's say you take him, and Laramie Tunsil is who we think he's going to be. Brandon Coleman moves inside to guard. Cosme becomes healthy. Well, now all of a sudden, I'm looking at an offensive line going, okay, next year, if you want to swing, go ahead. Right? Now you might get a guy that performs, I won't say like Saquon, because Saquon himself is special. But, you could get really good production out of the gate just like that. But you need the infrastructure around. KDot, I 1,000% agree with you.
Yeah.
On that.
How many more examples? Derrick Henry before he goes to Baltimore. Christian McCaffrey in Carolina.
Yep.
Waste of time.
Situation matters a lot for running back.
100 billion%.
Yep. JG VQ6RD. I'm hard of hearing, but KDot is still too loud for me. So there are a couple of ways to attack that, JG. One, you could have listened to this episode, in which case you probably enjoyed it. Two, you could reduce the volume. And three, I think you should get a username, JGVQ6. It's KDot, over to you.
You got a profile picture?
Nope, JG.
Didn't think so.
Yeah.
You need some seasoning, son.
It's true. It's true. And KDot's here to provide. So am I, actually, for that matter. Bet boy Tony C, to round out the comment mailbag over here, shout out. I'm all about Nick Scorton. He's got some intangibles that make him a perfect fit. He started his college career at Purdue as a traditional 265-pound edge rusher and recorded 11 and a half sacks. He then transferred to Texas A&M, where he was asked to gain 20 pounds and play a completely different role in a completely weird defensive scheme. He excelled in both roles. These things scream coachability and great teammate to me. His willingness to sacrifice personal stats for the betterment of what his team was trying to do, and the versatility he showed in being able to contribute in multiple ways are both traits that put him closer to the top of the pack as far as edge rushers go. Share this shit, bitches. Well, I'll tell you what. I didn't know all that about Nick Scorton, but if all that's true, and I trust Bet Boy Tony C with it, that sounds like a Washington Commander to me. The versatility and the sacrifice to be able to make the teammates better around you. And it is well known, because Shamar Stewart was also over there, and they didn't have great numbers, that the talent was excellent at Texas A&M. And all these scouts agree. And the coaching was bad. So another point over to Tony over there. That sounds great. KDot, your reaction to the comment.
Yeah, Nick Scout. If you remember, my comp was Trey Henderson with sand in his pants.
Yes, that was.
Just for posterity, my top 5 fits edge, my favorites, and in order. Number 1, you spelled your name wrong, Williams. James Pearce Jr., number 2. Donovan Ezeiraku, number 3. Nick Scorton, number 4. Shamar Stewart, number 5.
Okay, there you go. So that's KDOT's, and you'll notice that numbers 2 and 3, Pearce and Ezeiraku, were mentioned by Ben Robinson grinding the mock. So that's just, one of our co-hosts mind melding with the guy that collects thousands of mock drafts. So, that's what we bring to the table. Go ahead.
And I will say, the mock drafts that I've done, I picked up that tackle more time than often than anything else.
Who's Simmons? Okay. Well, there you go. So, on absolute.
I didn't like it when I did it. I did it and it made sense.
Well, one of the takeaways I felt like from what Ben was saying was that, hey, with the first 2 rounds, ideally you're going premium position, right? Like he had said best player available on defense, and safety is not necessarily a premium position, but it is. The secondary itself is still quite valuable, especially if you have a top tier guy. Malaki Starks would present that. Might be the best safety in the draft based on who you listen to over there. So, that's what we're talking about. Otherwise, edge, offensive line, he had mentioned, right? We trade for Laramie Tunsil. Who cares? Take Josh Simmons if he's over there. So that's the approach with those early picks. Look there.
No, sorry, the light flickered.
Oh, okay. Here. You've overcome adversity today. I want you to know that.
It's been a day. I don't even know what the fuck I was going to say.
Well, I can round it out. This was the show. This was District Divided, a DC Sports Podcast. More specifically. A Washington Commanders podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode.
Checklist. I think the way that we are looking at this is way too checklist focused.
Oh.
I think us as Commanders fans, what the fuck did I just do? Us as Commanders, we have this in our head that like they haven't addressed this, at least they touched everything else. We can upgrade at every position out of the quarterback. Just people remember that.
Yep. No, that's true, because when we talk about last year's team, it was a lot of free agents on a 1-year deal. A lot of free agents on a 1-year deal, man. So, like, you are looking to upgrade just about everywhere. So if this front office, and we trust them, love somebody at 29, and maybe it's a running back, I'm cool with it. I'm cool. We need upgrades absolutely everywhere. I'm excited for the draft.
Tackle.
I'm excited for the
Or
draft
a
and D
safety.
tackle. Yeah. Yeah.
Or a kicker.
There. Well, kicker first round. You trust him?
Like I'm down for a running back as long as it's Dylan Simpson. I'm joking. I like Henderson. All right.
Amit,
Are we doing
that
after the pod?
is KDot. Yes, we are. A very brief one. I'm Amit, that is KDot. And if you enjoyed today's episode, once again, that was Ben Robinson, author of grindingthemocks.com. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, comment as you always do, and KDot.
Seasoning boy. Share this shit.
Share this shit. We greatly appreciate you guys as always. A quick after the pod begins right now. All righty. No, hey, listen, you did overcome adversity. Thought you did a great job with that.
I made this a shit episode with terrible audio.
No, you didn't. I would have been losing my mind. You actually kept your cool, which was impressive.
Well, I like the way that we do this show is we just kind of roll with the punches. Most people would just pause stuff and fix it and then go edit it. And I don't know if it's because we're brave or because we're lazy as fuck.
I think it's a bit of
we
both.
don't do that.
I think it's more the latter than the former, but I think it works. Because then we don't get gems like you continuing to riff when my internet just goes out. Otherwise, we'd be like, oh, we'll wait and it'll be fine. And then no, but I mean, that was probably one of the best moments of the pod. I think it does. I absolutely think it does.
Which is where it's like the I think we've gotten better. I think our episodes recently are not necessarily reflective of our talent level because there's nothing to talk about.
We are trying. It's not a lack of effort, though. It's
the views are reflecting it.
Yes.
Except when I look at Ref the District, shout out to those guys, but goddamn, son, they put in work.
They're doing their thing.
Here's the thing. I know that I say this, and in the comments, people are going to drop the same 10 things they always say that we haven't done yet. So, but we're getting there. And just I just hope people understand. I think we're getting better.
I think so, too. And I'm learning about AI now. So all of a sudden, if we got 2 different people using AI to help this podcast out, who knows? Who knows what can come of it? That'd be something, huh?
I'm not getting called and pulled into meetings with clients that want to introduce me to the AI expert that's talked to them.
Oh my gosh.
I am so angry.
You're probably so ahead of everybody.
Doesn't matter. As long as somebody's got that like silver tongue is able to say, hey, I figured out a way to do this thing and that thing using AI. You either get one half the population is like, fuck that evil voodoo shit.
Mm-hmm.
Or you got the other half of the population that AI says, that's trendy. I don't know how to do that. He says he's doing it. And then you end up, here's the thing. If people, I could get fired from a client for saying what I'm about to say right now, but fuck it. I got an email with a rundown on what the meeting's going to be and what's covering the meeting. This motherfucker's just typing shit in the chat GPT and not even massaging it. And I got to sit through a meeting. And
That
here's
is
the thing.
annoying.
I don't have a choice. I have to implement what he's doing.
You have to? I guess it's a client. Yeah.
And if it works at one, I have to use it for a bunch of clients.
Oh my gosh.
People, watch this goddamn show. Share this fucking shit.
Please share this.
Let it be that we can make some money off this motherfucker. Like a lot of money.
Yeah, sick
then-
that would be.
Yeah,
Full-time district divided.
Get
It'd be
fucking
beautiful.
press passes.
Oh my gosh. Get to speak to the players. Speak to Josh.
You guys want this duo talking.
That
to
would be
players
insane. If
and
we
like
got to speak
in
to
the
players.
booth, like with all the other press, just being crazy.
That would be wild. That would be a lot of fun. I gotta think I heard a lot of the guys that I think, by the way, Commanders content creators are incredible. Let's just start there. Like, incredible. Because I've heard some other content creators for other teams. I don't really think it compares. Like, there's so much passion around this football team here. It's nuts. But I do think that if people could choose who to send, I do think we'd be high on a lot of people's lists in terms of like talking to players and stuff like that. I think
I
it'd
don't
be
know
awesome.
about a lot of people, but some people very passionately.
The people we want to have some on the higher end of the list. We can wrap it up.
I
on
got
that,
my
honestly.
own comments about Commanders content creators, but hey, we're all together. We love the same team.
Well, what we'll do is we'll have
each
him
other.
on, and then we can just be like, actually, this is more of an intervention. KDot's got some
We're
thoughts.
better than all of you. Even the ones we love. Some of the ones we don't. But we're better than all of you.
We'll catch
Peace
you
and
guys
love.
later. Take it easy.
But we are better. And I'm trying to be humble. Because we ain't got no followers like that. So I have to be. But straight up. We the best out this motherfucker. I'm just saying, ain't nobody fucking with us. Not in any way, any circumstances. You know how we fucking do. We're the shit. We're the shit. We're the shit.
In DC, we're just hoping that you listen.